Today on Nova Legends podcast, I have Lake Braddock football coach Mike Dougherty, whose Bruins just qualified for the state playoffs with a 40-25 win over Fairfax. Coach, congratulations! Great to see you.
No, good to see you. Appreciate you having me.
Oh, of course. Let me remind folks of your background. You were the coach at Unity Reed Stonewall, and then you went to Woodson and had great success at Woodson. Then you came over to Lake Braddock, the bitter rival. I went to Robinson, um, and last year you took the Bruins to the state semis, got all the way, and you played against a very strong Highland Springs team. Uh, First of all, Coach, I think you guys did something I've never heard of in football. Is you won 3 games in 8 days. Have you ever heard of another football team doing that?
Not on this planet. No, I've never heard of any at any level really playing 3 games in a little over a week. It was definitely a challenge, but I really love how our guys just it didn't really phase them. I mean, it was tough getting them through practices leading up to Saturday's game just because they were just exhausted physically, emotionally, mentally, but. And we saw it in the game for sure. I mean, we're not used to getting shoved down the field like we kind of got shoved in the second half, but they hit a wall physically, but fortunately we scored enough to come out on top. But yeah, that whole situation with playing that many games, it's pretty wild.
Did you learn something about coaching? The fact I know you have a big roster, so Lake Braddock, I know you have last year you told me you have a lot of kids to try it out. So you're probably in better position than most to withstand that kind of schedule. But did you learn something about coaching that the fact that you had to get a team prepared for 3 games in 8 days?
I probably learned a little bit about pumping the brakes in practice a little bit, but doing it the right way. The minute you show any type of, all right, we're going to take it easy today, 16-year-old kids, they'll just run rampant on you. So it was probably as a coaching staff, we learned how to keep the edge on them, but at the same time, we would just slide an inside run period out and not do it. So it was just a really tough balancing act midweek after you play on Tuesday, having Thanksgiving Day and trying to be as physical as you could without wearing them down. So yeah, I would say we learned how to really conserve and just be smart at practice, but still get some work done.
Yeah. Did it help in that you knew there was a good chance two of the games are going to be lopsided and possibly all three? You'd beaten all three teams, I believe. So did you knew that the games probably would not be one touchdown games? Did it make it easier to know you can play players early in those games, or did you were you afraid to take anything for granted because you know how things go? You put your subs in, all of a sudden the other team gets a little momentum, and the game is a lot closer than you think, and then you end up playing your starters for all 4 quarters.
I would say the first round of the playoffs, maybe we kind of thought we could get some guys into the game, but against West Springfield, that's a neighborhood battle. I know the score may have said otherwise, but we probably kept guys in longer than normal because we kind of blew it open late. We're pretty much two platooned. We're having to play a couple guys both ways in spots at this part of the year, but we're able to practice two platoon and play two platoon, which is a blessing at the high school level because not every team I've coached we've been able to do that. Um, but we literally had guys that hadn't practiced defense playing defense on Saturday because we had a guy in the secondary go down. So we take Kai Austin, one of our best receivers, and we're like, play corner. And he went out there and did a great job. Just, he's just an athlete making plays. And we'll probably rep, some other guys on offense and defense this week that haven't done it all week, just because we got a big challenge with Madison on Saturday.
Yeah. If you can, you may want to stay away from this, but do you think it was handled right, the compressed schedule? I know some of the scheduling was out of the VHSL's hands because of the court order, but do you think they handled it right? Would you have preferred them to move back to playoffs a few weeks? How did you feel about the way it was handled?
Well, I think from their end, from a black and white scheduling and facilities situation where they have JMU and UVA and these places already reserved and probably already paid for. I get why they did what they did, but from a player safety standpoint, they laid an egg. I'll say that to anybody that wants to hear it. Making kids, we're the only team in the state that played 3 games in 9 days. That's how it worked out because, Fairfax was set to do that, and then how things changed for them. But it's a pretty big disadvantage for one team to have to go through that. And I get it, but they should have pushed everything back a week, and that would have inconvenienced everybody. But it was just it was a big challenge for us to play those 3 games in that short amount of time. And in playoff games, it's not like, middle of the season. Oh well, we got this team. We can at halftime we'll have a running clock. I mean, these are playoff games.
Yeah. Well, Coach, the whole country has been paying attention to Northern Virginia football, which is interesting because, we have good football up here, but I don't think we're nationally known necessarily for football in Northern Virginia, but we've gotten a lot of attention. Has that been a major distraction to you as a coach? I know Hayfield is not in your district, but obviously in your region. Has that situation been a distraction most of the year?
It has. It's all anybody ever wants to talk about. And we were real open with our team. We would talk about it not weekly, but if something came up and they had questions, we would openly talk about it because social media tends to spin it any way that it wants to. And I must have heard 100 different stories about what was going on, and 99 of them weren't true. So I think what we did as a staff and as a team was we talked about it. We talked about it every week, how it could possibly affect us. And some of our kids had opinions and some of our coaches had opinions, but we tried to do our best to keep that in our meeting rooms and not go out on social media or not talk out of pocket. Because it's not our business, but it is our business because it affected us in a pretty tough way here over the last couple of weeks.
Well, it's been the issue's been a lightning rod in the area for sure. Um, what about within the locker room, within the school? Is it something? Was it a fierce debate? Was it generally? Did most people feel the same way, or what was the internal mood like at Lake Braddock with the whole situation?
I mean, the kids deflect and they make jokes. Like they'll try to make jokes of it, and we kind of let them run with that. The adults in the building, they just had lots of questions, and I tried not to participate in a lot of the wild stories that we were hearing. Um, at the end of the day, um, did justice prevail? It's not for me to say. And had we had to line up against them, we would have done everything we could to compete and prepare and all those things. But uh, I'm looking forward to Hayfield not being the topic of conversation. Maybe once we get through these playoffs and through the holidays, but I think this whole situation will go down as I mean, you could write a book about this or a 30 for 30 or whatever, a documentary. It's pretty wild how this whole thing shook out.
I think the bright side is a lot of people are watching high school football now. They may not have been paying attention before. I've been following basketball for many, many years. And the reason why I played football, but the reason why I started to follow high school football several years ago is because of the scores that Freedom was putting on people. And I was trying to figure out what the heck is going on down there. So the whole thing, even though it does take away from what you're trying to do, it has really brought interest into it. Do you think, leaving Hayfield aside, that there needs to be clear rules about people moving into school districts or transfers? Would it be easier if there are more hard and clear rules about what coaches can do and what you can say?
Well, I did learn something about how the transfer policy works, and everybody thinks they know how it works and they have their own ideas. There are 17 exceptions to the transfer policy in either FCPS or VHSL, which they're one and the same a lot of times, but I found that alarming that there was 17 loopholes or exceptions. That's where the work needs to get done is limit the amount of exceptions. I mean, if a family moves and they can prove that they left their previous dwelling and they live then I think it is what it is. But there's the loopholes with the dual parents that are split, and then there's military, and then there's social and emotional. It's just there are so many subcategories categories that I guess people try to take advantage of to, to get where they want to get. There's other states like Pennsylvania that I think they have a hard, fast rule that if you want to transfer, there's one or two exceptions, and then if you don't meet those requirements, you sit from athletics for 365. So I'm not in a position to tell you what the policy should be. What we currently have was exposed that it doesn't work, and I hope that the powers that be will include some of us veteran coaches as part of the rebuilding or figuring this thing out to make it so it's a little more equitable across the board.
Yeah. Well, Coach, as you may know, I do a panel call with basketball coaches periodically. And, these coaches are bitter rivals, but we always have a good chat. Do you think that's possible with football? Do you think there'll be tension between some of the coaches going forward? Or do you think this is one of these things that, next year we'll be able to move forward and some of the craziness and the drama from this year will be left behind?
Well, I'll tell you, a couple of years ago when COVID came about and we had our winter season and the craziness of all that, I've never felt closer to the group of coaches that I'm used to not liking and competing with and having animosity with. That event really brought us together. I think this one brought us together too. I mean, we met several times over the summer. We met a few times right before the playoffs, and these are people that I don't usually have a whole lot to talk about. And we had this common theme that we were all kind of supporting and trying to get through. And I think moving forward, me personally, my guard's down a little bit on stuff like that. I'm open to getting to know these guys because they're fighting the same fight that I am in the hallways every day and at practice and just trying to herd cats with my kids. And there's been three really crazy events in my coaching career: the DC Sniper in the early 2000s, the COVID in 2020, and then this. I mean, they are all three like epic events in high school coaching. And I think, 15 years from now, when I'm a marshal on a golf course, cutting grass and fishing, those will be the three things that jump out at me as the most newsworthy moments because it was the whole country. It wasn't just Fairfax County or the area that we were in. It was national news.
Yeah. I do think one thing that when I look around the state, even if we change and we put clear rules, teams like Maury and Highland Springs and Phoebus, they have much lax transfer rules than we have up here. So I think even if we get what people may say a level playing field up here in terms of transfers, I think we're always going to suffer when we play downstate. And basketball, John Marshall, the Class 2 champ, they have kids from New York City, and it's so extreme that I think that's going to be hard. But look, let's get to football because what you're getting to two state playoffs in a row is a tremendous achievement. What last year in the Highland Springs game, that was kind of an emotional game too. I watched it online. What did you guys learn that game? Do you think playing a team at that high level, that was a very high level team. I watched them play live against Freedom in the final. What do you think you guys learned from playing against Highland Springs last year?
We learned that Northern Virginia elite not necessarily at the moment equals state of Virginia elite. At almost every position, we were undersized and slower. So it was the speed and they were ferocious. Like they came downhill and they were playing different style of football than we see week to week. Super proud of how our boys kind of, fought to the bitter end. I hated how it ended at the end of the game. That no one wants to see, anything go down sideways at the handshake line and stuff like that. But I think we learned that, once we're out of the friendly confines of Burke, Virginia, you better strap it up and get ready to deal with, just a different mindset, a different type of football out at that part of the state. So we definitely learned a lot about, preparing to play teams from outside of the northern region.
Yeah. Well, this year I watched your game online against Madison, and I watched much of the Fairfax game. Um, coming into the season, what did you think about your team this year? I know the Madison game. you guys struggled. They appeared to be in postseason form, and they had almost all seniors on their defense. They had the quarterback Cale Yates coming back, and they had, of course, Dominic Nisley. Um, I felt that they were probably a little bit further along on their trajectory than you guys were, but it's September, or that might have even been August. Um, but what did you feel like going into the season? Did you think you guys could be on the same level as you were last year?
Well, we replaced nine starters on defense. So nine of those kids that are started all year were either playing JV or weren't playing at all. So we were very concerned of what the learning curve was going to be for us on the defensive side of the ball. And to my coach's credit, to my players' credit, that's been our strength all year. I know we've put up some points, but our defense is really the reason we are where we are. So that was a pleasant surprise. We were messing around with the two quarterbacks, trying to figure out which one to use, if we could use them both, and I now agree that if you have two, you really don't have one. It was tough, because I feel like we have the best two quarterbacks in our conference and maybe top two out of three in the region on our roster. So once we figured out how to balance that, so coming into the season, underestimated the defense and how quickly they would learn and grow. I mean, we have three sophomores and a freshman that start on defense this year, so
Hmm.
that bodes well for next year. We're only going to graduate two or three off the defense, and offensively, we had just the opposite. We had nine starters coming back, so we were pretty optimistic that we'd be able to put some points up. We lost a couple linemen early, so we had to make some shifts there. But yeah, we just in week two, Madison 100% looked like they were in week 12, and Lake Braddock looked like they were in week two. We were still trying to figure out, our identity and what we were going to be able to do. But um, we're a different team than we were week two, and so is Madison. They've continued to get better, which is amazing on their side of it. But we really like where we are. If we can recover and be ready to go, mid to late week, we're gonna give them everything we can.
It was evident in that game that you guys had the talent and the pieces were there. It was going to take some time to get there. Um, you said your defense is playing at a very high level now, and you have nine new starters. It's fun to anticipate which players are going to develop and which ones don't, even though we want all of them to develop. Was there a lot of surprises the ones that end up being great players for you that you did not see it coming? Isn't it the fun part about coaching when you have a brand new start with the unit and you're able to put something together? It's very powerful.
Well, a long time ago when I was a young head coach, I had an assistant coach that he was a longtime baseball coach, and he's like, every sophomore you have on the field equals two losses. And I looked at him and I was like, what do you mean by that? He goes, every starting sophomore in football is going to equal two losses. If that were the case, we would have been sub 500 this year. So really proud of the fact that we played some younger guys that were big question marks and took some lumps early. They had to learn how they fit into our system. They also had to learn that Thursday night freshman football is a little bit different than Friday night varsity football. So once that learning curve kind of leveled off, um, three of our four linebackers are brand new this year, and two of them are sophomores. So, and just to how they've grown and stayed healthy, and that's the biggest thing is if your elbow hurts and you're a freshman or a sophomore, sometimes you don't practice for 3 or 4 days. If your elbow hurts and you're playing for us for Friday night, you play with a hurt elbow. So that maturity and that growth in some of the younger guys, and that's a credit to the older kids around him. Trent Payne's one of the most dominant defensive players I've ever coached, and I have a Tim Settle who played for me when we were at Unity Reed. He plays for the Texans now. Now Tim Settle's 6'3", 320 pounds and moves like a running back, but Trent is probably the next most disruptive defensive down defenders I've ever coached, and that's tall praise for him. Xavier Maine is a William and Mary commit, and he's playing linebacker for us. He had 21 tackles Saturday. So, when you got a little bit of senior leadership and guys that produce, and then the younger guys learn how to play with hurt elbows, We've really matured and grown, and we deserve to be where we are. And our guys realize that. Last year, I felt like we were just kind of happy to get there. Hey, we made it to the state semifinal. Now what? That was the immediate sentiment of some of my older kids is don't just be happy that we made it. We can really win this thing. So they're really believing that that's our goal.
Coach, which quarterback did you finally settle upon?
Ty Jackson right now is going to be our starter. He had knee surgery in the middle of the season. We had named him starter the first time we played Fairfax back late September, and he went down with a meniscus injury, had surgery about a week later, and really isn't 100% yet, but he's as close as he's going to get. So we started him Saturday, and we plan to start him this Saturday. He's just dynamic with his arm and his feet, and we feel like he gives our offense the best chance to make plays down the field.
Yeah. Is it a bigger advantage to beat a team with which you're going to rematch with, or is it better to have lost to them because maybe the kids are listening, you're motivated, and maybe the other team is taking you for granted some?
I think year to year that changes. I think last year we were excited to play somebody outside of our area and not have to play Madison again. This year, our guys are different. They know that they didn't have their best night that night, and they know Madison's good. They respect that. But we're it's going to be an interesting week because they're really looking forward to going out and potentially being the best team in the Northern region.
Yeah. If you had to describe Madison, how would you describe them offensively and defensively?
Offensively, they have playmakers at every position, and their linemen are angry, and they come downhill. They're just angry, and they're going to be super physical. And we weren't ready for that in week two. We got dragged up and down the field when we played them back in September. Their quarterback is such a capable runner. I don't think people give him enough credit. And their scheme, they're going to unbalance you. They're gonna play action you. They're going to boot. They use the tight end well, and number one is the Tony Rojas of a couple years ago, in my opinion. He's that elite, and they put him everywhere. So, we don't want him to beat us by himself, but he doesn't have to beat us by himself. They have several weapons. Defensively, they're even angrier. Their safety comes downhill like nobody will see all year, and he comes down with bad intentions. And when you can set the tone like that in games and the defense comes and tackle for losses on just basic run plays and they don't make mistakes. So, we're gonna need them to make some mistakes Saturday, and we're gonna have to take advantage when we have chances to make plays.
Yeah. Madison has perennially been a strong football program, especially over the last 4 or 5 years. I think they've won 3 or 4 state regional titles in a row. You've really turned Lake Braddock around and you got them on the right track, even though Lake Braddock's got a rich history over the last 10, 15 years or so. Is that an advantage for Madison? They've had so much success lately, or once you get on the field and as you put it, everyone starts getting angry. Those kind of things go out the window.
I think we need to put them in a position they haven't been in, and that's chasing. We immediately were chasing them when we played them, and we couldn't catch back up. So that's our plan is going to be in the first round of that heavyweight fight is we want to throw some punches. We want to land some punches and maybe and put them in a situation where maybe they're not as comfortable, where they're behind by a couple scores. Um, this is not going to be a game we win 14-10. It's just not going to happen. It's going to be a game where we're going to have to score 30 plus probably to win the game. And that's easier said than done. I don't think they've given up. I think 28 may be the most they've given up in a game, and that was to Westfield a couple weeks ago in the playoffs. So, advantage is to them. They're the standard right now. And I think they've won 5 region championships in a row. And
Hmm.
I think they've appeared in 3 state championships. So, yeah, for us to be on the field with them, we have to swing first and force them into some uncomfortable situations.
Yeah. Well, Coach, look, this is exciting. I'm so happy for you. I know what it must mean to you. Last week when you guys were practicing during Thanksgiving week as a coach, what does that feel like? It must be a sense of pride for you that when the rest of the region is resting, I think actually you had 2 games last week, but you guys are actually playing, practicing. As a coach, that must mean you're doing something right.
Well, the number one goal when we'll in January when we start working out for next year, the number one goal is to practice on Thanksgiving Day. That tells you you're in the region championship, and our kids, they know how important that is. We do award decals on the helmets for touchdowns. We have a whole rack of criteria. Well, one year we did turkeys. It was pictures of turkeys. So every time we won a game, everybody got their turkey decal because the goal was to practice on Thanksgiving Day, and that was 2019. I think we lost to South County in the region final. So Thanksgiving week is a very special week for you to still be practicing. It means you're one of 8 teams that are getting to do that. Um, and the teams that do it year in and year out, you just get used to it. I can remember the very first time I did it, the season felt like it lasted 2 years. I was like, man, this is a really long season. Well, now we're in December, and we expected to be here. We're happy to be here, and it's not as much as a shock to our older kids system that we're still practicing. But Thanksgiving morning is an awesome practice. The alumni come back. We have a big breakfast, a lot of pictures, a lot of hugs and smiles. We won't have too many hugs and smiles this week. We're gonna hit the ground running this afternoon, and I think it might hit 40 degrees, so we're in good shape.
Yeah, it's football weather. It's Pittsburgh Steeler weather. Coach, how healthy you are? How healthy are you going into Saturday's game? Given that you played 3 games in
I
9 days.
think everybody will be available. We'll have several that we keep out of contact this week. It was a real juggling act last week with the 2 games in 4 days. We had half of our starters not really participating in any of the contact periods, but yeah, we got a wrist, an ankle, a couple shoulders, but um, this group, you're not keeping them off the field. There's nothing that's going to keep any of these guys off the field. So they'll do whatever they need to this week to be out there on Saturday.
Yeah. Well, Coach, last question. I really appreciate your time. Always great talking to you. It's obvious why you're so successful. When Hollywood makes a movie about this fall, who do you want to play Coach Doherty? Or
Ooh, that's a good
Doherty. Doherty's right.
Doherty. That's all
Doherty.
right. It's
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to go with Jim Carrey. I need Jim Carrey to play me because he's Dumb and Dumber's the all-time favorite movie, and I'm not ashamed to tell anybody that wants to hear. But I think we break Jim Carrey out of retirement, and he comes in because 90% of my day I'm using humor. I'm trying to relate. It's getting harder and harder every year to relate to 16 and 17-year-olds, but we try to laugh, we try to have a good time. So I'll go with Jim Carrey.
I can't imagine the kids respecting Jim Carrey, Coach. But I'm gonna take your word. I'm gonna take your word for it and put that request in. Well, look, Coach. Best of luck against Madison. I can't wait. I believe it's Saturday at 1 p.m. at Madison. Is that correct?
2
Or
p.m.
2 p.m.
2
2 p.m.
p.m.
Saturday at Madison. So I'll definitely be on the sidelines there, and one of these days look forward to meeting you in person.
That would be great. See you Saturday. Thanks for
Okay.
having me.
Yeah, of course, Coach. Good luck, buddy.
Thanks, Ben.